You know, international waters, they can get pretty crowded, and things get really tense when military patrols from two major powers get a little too close for comfort. That's exactly what we're diving into today, a recent super high-stakes encounter over the South China Sea that's really shining a light on the growing tensions in that whole region. Okay, picture this. You're piloting a patrol aircraft, just doing your job, and bam! Out of nowhere, a fighter jet zooms past, releasing flares right across your flight path. I know, it sounds like something straight out of a movie, right? But nope, this is exactly what Australia says its military just went through. So let's break down what actually happened here. All right, so what exactly went down over the South China Sea? Well, we're talking about a super tense moment between an Australian patrol aircraft and a Chinese military jet. And here's the thing, one side is calling it dangerous, while the other is saying, hey, we were just defending our territory. So let's get the basic facts straight. We've got an Australian P-8A patrol plane flying over the South China Sea. It gets intercepted by a Chinese military jet, which then releases flares. Now, the good news here is that the Australian plane wasn't damaged, and most importantly, no one was hurt. But, and this is a big but, the incident itself has definitely set off some major diplomatic alarms. And this right here is where the story gets, well, complicated. Because as soon as the news broke, two completely different stories started to emerge. It kind of makes you wonder, right? How can two governments look at the exact same event and describe it in two totally opposite ways? So the whole disagreement really boils down to just a handful of words. On one side, you have Australia calling the move unsafe and unprofessional. And on the other, China says the Australian jet illegally intruded. Just those two phrases show you how far apart they are on everything. International law, territory, you name it, in this really critical part of the world. Let's dig into Australia's side for a second. For them, this is all about behavior. They're basically saying, look, it doesn't matter where the planes were, there are rules of the road for how militaries are supposed to act around each other to, not cause a disaster. So when they call it unsafe, what they're really saying is that a major line was crossed. But if you flip over to Beijing's point of view, it's a totally different story. For them, it's not about how their jet behaved, it's about the fact that the Australian jet was even there in the first place. China's Southern Theater Command is pretty clear. They see the Australian jet as the aggressor, saying it seriously infringed upon China's sovereignty. So in their version of events, their pilot was just doing their job, kicking out an intruder, and it was a totally justified response. Okay, and here's a really crucial point. This wasn't just a one-off thing. It's actually the latest in a whole string of tense encounters between the Australian and Chinese militaries. And to really get why this matters so much, you have to look at it as part of a bigger and frankly, pretty concerning pattern. Just look at this timeline. It really shows how things have been escalating. I mean, just last year, we had a similar flare incident over the Yellow Sea. Then fast forward to November, and you have a Chinese Navy ship using sonar pulses that Australia says actually injured its Navy divers near Japan. Then February of this year, another flare incident. You can see it, right? The number of these close calls and the different kinds of encounters is definitely on the rise. So all of this leads to the big question. Why? Why does this keep happening? Well, the answer isn't simple. It's all tied up in this really complex geopolitical chess match that's being played out across the entire Indo-Pacific. Okay, so at the very heart of this is China's huge territorial claims over the South China Sea. Now, Australia, along with the US and others, regularly runs what they call freedom of navigation operations. Basically, they're flying and sailing through there to make the point that these are international waters, according to international law. But Beijing, they see this as a direct challenge to their sovereignty. And get this, the timing of this latest incident is interesting, to say the least. It happened just as Australia's Prime Minister was heading to the US, and you can bet a key topic on the agenda was the AUKUS Security Pact. So what is AUKUS exactly? Well, it's this massive security deal between Australia, the UK, and the US. And the main event, the centerpiece of the whole thing, is a plan to get Australia nuclear-powered submarines. That's a huge upgrade in military power. Now, from China's point of view, this is way more than just a submarine deal. They see it as a strategic play by the US and its buddies to box them in, to contain their influence right on their own doorstep. And when you have that kind of context, every single military interaction, no matter how small, becomes this high-stakes test of wills. And all of this really brings us to the final critical question here. As these kinds of face-offs become more, well, routine, the risk of a miscalculation, of one little mistake that could blow up into a major international incident, just keeps getting bigger. It really leaves you wondering, doesn't it?
In these contested waters and skies, where is the line between a standard patrol and a dangerous provocation? And maybe more importantly, who gets to draw that line?